Your teaching style is very unique compared to other teachers everywhere. What gave you this idea of becoming this cool Gen Z teacher, posting reels, doing reels with students?
You know, a lot of people think like I only make reels in the class. But if you actually think, I cover a lot of content in my class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And reels is only that end ka 2 3 minutes or maybe max 10 minutes that I would spend on creating a reel. But it's not something that the class is actually based on. And I feel today there needs to be something that Gen Z also needs to be look forward to, something that makes them excited. And given their attention time span, given the fact that they want to be out there, right? And given the fact that it's just a way to kind of build connect with your students. So reels was never a thing for me. I used to just like I simply wanted to share things that I was doing in the class with a larger audience because earlier I didn't have a Prof Munshiji account. It was all on my personal page, but as the student body grew, I just realized, I can't have my personal stuff also on the same page. So I started creating, my own page, and then people started following, and then this entire boom of reels came, and I said, "Okay, like let's tap into this." So if you see, some of my most initial reels are all just based on like classroom interaction, things that I would make myself. And then I don't know, someone one of the days, I think about like maybe a year and a half or two back, someone suggested, "So why don't we try this trending audio?" And I was like, "ठीक है, चलो reel बनाते हैं." And it just kind of
This is
went.
all in Atlas?
Yeah. And I think pretty much it just kind of like spread. So for me, reels and being on Instagram is just a way to connect with my students, because today when I talk to a student, maybe in class or like during a class session or an example that I would give, I always take an example based on something that they've done. Today, when I wish a student happy birthday, or that I've seen their birthday pictures on Instagram and I wish them, oh, like this morning I wished Asmi like happy birthday in class, and I said, "How was your birthday?" She had a smile on her face. The student feels like, oh, he knows it was my birthday. They feel
Students
acknowledged.
feel seen.
Students feel seen and they feel acknowledged. And a lot of people somehow who are a little kind of shy to connect with me in class, they build a very good rapport with me on Instagram. And many times it starts with like, let's just serve one reel and like, let's see, you know. But sometimes we get very crazy stuff on through these DMs also, right? Like
Anything
before
you would
the
like to share?
yeah, so like Instagram DMs are not meant for academic queries. Like you can route that
I see your
through.
notes during exam, no doubts on
Yeah,
Instagram DMs.
exactly. Because there are days where like everyone thinks, oh, Amir sir is going to respond through DMs. Like, no, but those DMs are not for academic queries, right? So it's more of the fun side, but it's a way for me to connect with my students, and that kind of builds the bond with the student. It also makes them more wanting to sit for a class rather than just having to say like, oh, we have to sit in a class because we need the attendance, so to say.
When was your first teaching job?
My first teaching job was when I myself was a student at HR College of Commerce and Economics. And HR as a college was, very welcoming of their own students kind of, coming into the classroom. So while I was in my second year, I was actually co-teaching with another faculty the first year. And my favorite subject, Principles of Management, which I teach till date. And that kind of just, started out there. But interesting story to that also of how that started. So actually, at that point in time, Dr. Meena Desai was expecting and she was on maternity leave. So she needed somebody to kind of fill in that position till the time she was on maternity leave. And I was always interested in teaching. I loved teaching. I still do. And it seemed like, again, like if it's meant to be, that opportunity will kind of just open up. So started out from there, taught at like so many places after that, again through just like, referrals and the way the word spreads. So yeah.
All canon events in your life are like so random.
Yeah, but I think that's how life is. Like it's never pre-planned. So while we are on this podcast, okay, I'll share with you the story about the only one podcast that I made in my life. My own personal podcast. And as I tell you the story, like I don't even remember the name of the platform where I made it. But when I was in the US, so I love my country. Like I love India. I love the family here. I loved my friends over here. But I was like really homesick. And I was
What year is
also,
this?
this was maybe 2019. I was really homesick and I was just missing my friends. And you don't get the same love and warmth and the casualness of friends that you would get over here. Yes, you have friends in the US, but they have a very different culture. You can't just pick up the phone and say, come on, let's meet, right? Like, you need to plan well in advance. And I don't know, I just wanted this platform to like share. So I went on, I don't know, I think I looked up some podcast app or what, I don't know. And it just ranted for like 20 minutes.
Is this podcast on YouTube somewhere?
I'll have to look and I'll have to share. But like a lot of people that saw it, they were like, that heard it, they were like, I don't know. I think it was something new at that point in time. Podcasting wasn't such a big deal, but it just like I just ranted. So even that kind of just happened very unexpectedly, but it drove home a message like to my friends, to my people over there. Like a lot of my friends back in the US asked me at that point in time, like, hey, we saw that, like, are you really missing your family so much? I'm like, yeah, like it's not the same thing, you know?
Why did you pursue your higher education in the States and not continue somewhere here in India?
See, I always wanted to go abroad to study. That was a thing that my parents also dreamt of. Uh, Everyone from my mom's side has done their masters abroad. Like my uncle has done his bachelor's and masters abroad. They've all studied there. So I feel like if you can afford to do it, you definitely should, because that's a whole different world of opportunities. It's a whole different world of teaching, and it's not a quantity game in the United States or anywhere in the world, as a matter of fact. You have a cap on the number of students, so there's more interaction with faculty. There is a greater amount of different assessment tools that can be utilized. So when I went there, I obviously learned a lot of these different tools as a student myself, but things that I could imbibe back into my classroom. So for me, it was mainly for the exposure. Not that I had not been to the US like multiple times before that, but it was just a way for me to kind of get back into a classroom, and something that I wanted to do a lot more, maybe just for the experience of living there, alone and experiencing that life like most students want to do.
We had David sir on, and he also mentioned how different the US education system is to education system over here. Why do you think that is?
So like I said, in the US it's not a numbers game, right? You're not concerned with how many people you enroll or with how many students are there in a classroom, but you care about, it's more about the quality that you're delivering. But in India, given our population and the fact that we need to kind of make space for all students, we focus a lot on the quantity. In essence, where then we are losing out on the quality of that education. So as much as we may say that, we don't want to have rote learning, we don't want to have, these standardized testing methods of a written paper at the end of the semester and things like that. Universities here are plagued by the problem that if you have so many students, there is no other way to test all of them but a standardized test. Because today, any other assessment tool that you use, right, you need to give a lot more time to those tools. Like today, if I have to take a presentation, an end term as a presentation, I need to give at least 15 minutes per group in order to do in order for them to do justice to their work. So that even a student feels like, we worked like, 1.5 months on this, this project, at least we got 15 minutes to talk and present our point. But now imagine in a class, if you have 75 students, and in a groups of like 5, that's 15 groups there, right? You're talking of a good number of hours just for like those 75 kids, and multiply that with how many, whatever is the enrollment in a particular university. You need that kind of time, and we don't have that kind of time here, because you have to schedule other subjects and other presentations according to those things. So I feel like that's the biggest challenge that we are facing. Like, I'll tell you, when I did my MBA, we were only 42 students in a class, and our professors there said,
What university?
the University of San Diego, and our professors there said, 42 is a big number, this is the biggest batch we had. And I had already taught for like almost, I think, 5 years prior to that. And I was like, wait, 42 is a big number for you? Like, we go to classrooms where there are nothing less than like 65. Back in HR, like HR, Jai Hind, KC, like I've taught at all these places, the class strength was like easily 60 kids minimum, right? And that for us was like normal. Like, a big class could have been like 2 divisions combined, like 120 kids together. That would have been a combined class. But see, for them, it is about delivering that quality to each and every individual student, right? Everyone should get value out of that, where you can give that attention to each person. But we don't get that kind of time, that kind of leeway, out here, as much as we may want to do it. But the administrative challenges are so many that then if we have to cater to the mass, then we might as well just standardize it.
The education system here is in such a way that a student has to by heart whatever XXX instead of being evaluated on what the student has learned. How do you think a change can be made over there?
A change, so like I said, if I did a project, or if I did a brief on a reading, or if I even asked a student to summarize, right? Like, a lot of times these days, I feel like a lot of my longer readings, because Gen Z's attention span is also reducing. So I've seen a lot of students now, what they do is they take a picture, they put it on ChatGPT, and they'll ask it to summarize, right?
That is standard now.
Standard. But at least when I get them to talk about that 1 or 2 points that they took away from that piece, students come and tell me, "Sir, that you asked me that question, right? Like, I remember it," right? So in order to cater to each one, then we have to kind of build in that individuality, which again doesn't come with a mass-based system, right? You need that personalized attention so that you get to know each learner. Having said that, I can't say we can always cater to every individual student. So some amount of standardization is required, right? So maybe not a rote learning system, but maybe like a Viva where you can at least answer conceptual based questions, right? Because a lot of times, we realize like students are coming to the classes, but even after having discussed it in detail, kind of, the drill, like I give, markings on a post-it note and things like that. I've given the definition in the class. Can you not explain the concept? So if you want to kind of ease the burden, I feel like just a 1-to-1 5-minute conversation also with a student of like, okay, some of the key concepts. Explain it in your own words. That gives me the drill. Or what are like maybe 10 key takeaways for you from, whatever we discussed in the course. Or for example, at least here at Atlas, we draw a lot of students from, your family managed businesses. Tell me something that you can apply from my class to your family managed business. That itself will tell me, okay, if this person has understood 5 things also, my job is done. We can't expect students that everything that we are doing in the classroom, they're going to imbibe that into a thing. Like a subject like accounts. Sure, we teach them, debit and credit and journal entries and things like that. But most students who are going to be business owners themselves are not going to be the ones passing those journal entries. But can you tell me if you can read a balance sheet? Can you read a profit and loss account? What does that end statement tell me? Wo bata do yaar, I understand that you know the game, like you know what is presented to you. See, tomorrow no one should be able to fool you. So that should be the end game. Like, are you well prepared to kind of deal with a situation like this?
Where does this passion for teaching come from? Did you have like a Amir Khan from Tare Zameen Par in your life?
You know, this also dates back to some of my experiences in college. I always loved teaching as a whole. Like, I always loved, you know, sharing. I used to be the, I'm not boasting about myself, but I used to be the diligent ones. I used to go to every class, take proper notes. And then I had my best friends who would not come for every class. They would come, but they would also bunk a lot of classes. And many a times they would all just show up at my house saying, Amir, you have to teach us accounts. Amir, you have to teach us this. Like, oh, we need notes for this. And I used to share notes with them. Subjects like accounts and finance, I had to teach them. And then one of the days, like one of my best friend, she just mentioned like, Amir, why don't you start teaching? Like people will literally pay you for this. Like you're so good. I'm like, arey no yaar, like, kahan se, where will I teach? And she's like, no, dude, like you're really good. Like we understand things. And I think from there, and then the opportunity at HR kind of just came up. And I said, let's take a try, right? Moreover, I feel like for me personally, it's just the fact that I love talking to people. So I don't come in with like a running script like, oh, I have to talk so and so, so and so, so and so. A lot of times I'm just talking about like some examples based on students, their lives, etc. And I connect that with concepts. So for me, it's more about a platform where I just interact with people, get talking to them. And through that, the learning just happens. But it's something I love. I don't think of this as, oh, I have to do it because I need a paycheck. Like, I genuinely love what I do.
Was teaching your first career choice?
It wasn't.
What was it?
So,
Dancer?
no. I wanted to do a professional job. So, I worked at KPMG before. And I was the only person in my whole family.
But when you were like 5, 6, your first choice was a corporate career?
No. Maybe that was 100% a teacher.
Achha.
For sure. Yeah.
How was your time at KPMG?
It was
What role
good.
did you do?
So I worked as an analyst in their global marketing compliance team. It was mainly about reviewing marketing communications. It's not your traditional marketing job, because a lot of these companies can't typically advertise their services, so they put out a lot of content like newsletters and thought leaderships and white papers and things like that. So I was in the brand review team, reviewed a lot of this external marketing content that went out. But more than, I say, and I tell students, all of them, any job that you take, right, you learn the skill required for the job like in no time. You'll get the mechanics of the job. But what you need to take away from the job is the experience of working with those people. And I feel like all of my stints basically have taught me a lot about what it is to work with people. So a lot of examples from my time at KPMG in India, examples of working in groups are again stories that I take to my class, where it kind of drives home the point of the theory that is there for the day.
So you're a part-time teacher. You work at your family business and you have learning scale.
Scape.
Can you talk about learning scale?
So the Learning Scape is basically again a venture that I started back in 2016 when I left from Founding Fuel. That was another startup that I worked for a short stint. And I realized again the need to scale and skill people. Having taught for, about 6 years prior to that, I realized there is this skill gap issue where what we are teaching in classrooms is not really preparing students for the real world. Like there is this textbookish knowledge, and then there is what they actually require in the workplace.
Soft skills.
Soft skills, right? Today, a lot of universities are doing very good work in that. So we don't see that much of a need for these services, and there are too many people there. But that's how it started. The need to kind of bridge that gap, right? To bridge that gap between academia and industry. Basic, skills like, like you said, soft skills, be it, communication skills, teamwork, power, how do you deal with conflict? So it started off with that, and then yeah, so I like go to a couple of schools. I do some workshops for them every year. Uh, Talk to grade 11 and 12 students over there. Talk about ethics in those classes, just to get them, you know, thinking about the issues that impact them, so to say.
You completed your PhD last year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What was that on?
So my PhD was on the future
Did
of.
you AI it?
Sorry.
Did you AI your
No, I
PhD?
didn't. I genuinely didn't. I
I see.
genuinely didn't. But so it was on the future of working from home in the post-COVID world, and there was a lot of commentary going on at that point in time about should work from home be there, should it not be there, how should companies decide, like, should they allow people to work from home or should they not allow people to work from home. And at that point in time, it had to be something in the space of management, and I said, at that point in time, nothing better than work from home, right? Like, the topic should be around work from home. So that's what I kind of found out, and kind of in sync with what we are seeing today as well, where while there is a hybrid based system, companies are now again wanting people to come back to the workplace for about 2 to 3 days every week. And that was pretty similar to what also the findings kind of recommended, because a lot of people did want to come to the workplace, like physically, in order to build that social connect.
What are your thoughts on academics using AI for research papers?
I feel you can use artificial intelligence for research in order to give you that starting point. A lot of times today, when you think of, parts of a research paper, like, your literature review, gone are the days when someone really had the time to read like 100, research papers in order to write that research review. But today with artificial intelligence, you can save a lot of time in writing the main section, which is literature review. So I feel if you use it for those purposes, sure, right? And again, like how most people usually write a research review, write the literature review for each paper, is they'll read the abstract, they'll read the conclusion, they'll make some sense of it, and they'll write their parts of the literature review. But I think that process can definitely be made faster using artificial intelligence. It also gives you those starting points. See, it also depends on the purpose of the research. Are you doing the research because you really want to do it? Or are you doing that research because, it's a part of your academic requirements? What is the motive behind that? If it's something that you really care. So when I did my PhD, I wrote 2 full-length research papers. One was on moonlighting and one was on the 4-day work week. Now, for me, these topics are really important, right? Because moonlighting was a concept that just came out at that time. People were doing it, but it came out as an academic concept at that time. And everywhere in typically the European nations, they were experimenting with a 4-day work week. I really cared about these topics. And for me, it was kind of in line with my subject area. So I put in like a lot of effort in actually collecting the data, doing the analysis. So if you really care about it, you will need to put in that time. But definitely one can use artificial intelligence for those starting points. Like writing a research paper, I'm not an expert on writing research papers, but I can tell you that by itself is a maze, because you don't know sometimes what do you want to include. Sometimes the scope can be too broad. So artificial intelligence can help you to at least narrow that scope, tell you, or help you to at least bucket out the various components.
How far away do you think we are from using AI as a mainstream for education?
A couple of, I think a school, if I'm not wrong, used a robotic teacher.
In India?
Yeah, somewhere in the south. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw this. You can use artificial intelligence to create content for your class, which again, I recommend people look through that content, because I personally believe like you can ask AI to generate your presentation, but it doesn't put in that personal element. There are things that you want to put in your presentation because you have to deliver it, right? But artificial intelligence cannot replace the emotion, the vibe.
You don't think they are AI is a threat to the teaching field?
It's a threat because you don't need a teacher to teach you those concepts. So you can ask ChatGPT whatever you want or any other tool of your choice. You don't need a teacher for that. But today, like I said, you're coming to a college not because you just want that knowledge, but you're also coming to a certain college because you want to build that network. You want to experience those 3 years of your life over here, or 4 years of your life. So more than and if you actually look at students today, I want to say they are way smarter than the older generations. Today you have students in like 5th and 6th standard who are talking about Shark Tank India. Like, I had no clue about what entrepreneurship as a concept, or what the meaning of entrepreneurship was when I was in the 5th grade. We cared about like history and geography lessons. So today, when a student comes to a class, a teacher has to accept the fact that the child already knows what you're about to teach, or has at least heard of it. You're not telling me something that I don't know. हाँ, मैंने सुना है. I've heard it. I've seen it on Instagram through one of the news portals that we follow. Right. But what the child needs is that nurturing environment that a teacher can kind of streamline. Sure, you know it, but let me just put a little academic context to it now. The reason why I take live examples in the class, things from newspapers, is like a big deal in my class. So you've seen in my presentations, I always put out like a cutout from a newspaper. Why? Because when I put that, right, students know this is real. Now today students don't read. Because they don't read, they don't know what's that new example. So a teacher brings in these elements to the class. Today, as a matter of fact, if you look at, online teaching, or, pre-recorded lectures, for example, there's no two-way communication there. And that's where a physical classroom with real teachers adds that USP, that human touch, element, feel.
I was having this conversation with my mother yesterday that this generation questions a lot. So she was doing BPharm, and we were having some conversation that she never questioned what she learned. And here I am like, if a professor is teaching me like, okay, how to make millions. You have not made millions. How are you teaching me how to make millions? That was never there in the previous generation. And right now, whatever a professor has to offer, in my mother's time at least, only the professor had to offer. Like, there was no internet and access to information wasn't there. Right now, type anything, whatever you want to know. That access to information is there, and that has, in my opinion, that has completely changed the education field, because knowledge is not exclusive now. Any questions you guys have?
So I'll add my 2 cents on it. While knowledge is not exclusive, and you rightly said today, you type anything and you get that. What the student doesn't realize is they know what is happening. They get the answers to that. But what is the base of that knowledge? So you're coming to an educational institute in order to learn, in order to get a degree, for which you need to obviously know the concept. Right? Not to say that, you're going to go and tell your father in your family business that, oh, ye concept apply karna hai. Not that way, right? But to get that degree, you need to know the concept. So while students know of everything, they don't know the theoretical base. So what I see the role of a teacher today is, like, sure, you've heard the example, right? Like, for example, we talk of in company policies, right? Like, you shouldn't be having relationships with people that you work with, or people that work in the same company like you do, right? That's a thing. But in an ethics class, today everyone knows of the example of astronomer and what happened at the Coldplay concert. But today when I explicitly mention in the class that these things are not okay, that's where the questioning line comes. So is it really not okay? I didn't really do something wrong. Like, it's my own free choice. It's my will. Yeah, sure, it's your will. But as per company policy, this is not allowed. So while students know, they know answers, they know examples, But we as teachers, at least my role as a teacher here is to put a little structure to that knowledge, right? Put a little context. And that is what then makes the grasping of the concept much more easier. Rather than me telling you, oh, this is the definition of management and this is how you manage people. No. Give me an example. Like the fact that today we're on this podcast and you've managed the entire show so well. You're already doing it. You have an entire team of like 6 people that you've stitched together very nicely. You share this example with me in the class. You're already a manager. So what I'm doing is I'm just telling you that Yash, as someone who's part of this podcast team, you've divided the work amongst everybody. There's someone who's handling the camera. There's someone who's, handled the back end, who's looking at permission issues. There are a couple of people testing the sound. Maybe someone's helped you to prepare these questions. That's division of work. And each of you has, complementary skills. But one of you is the face of the podcast. Henry Mintzberg's role of a figurehead leader. That's it. You've experienced it, but what have I done? I've just put an academic concept to it. That's the role of a teacher, not the other way around. And that's where a lot of teachers falter. They want to give you the definition. Definition ka main kya karu? As a student.
This generation needs more teachers like you who actually care about teaching. Like you curate your own course books and like I've never seen anyone do that. Do you have any advice for our viewers for this generation?
My advice to this generation would be you have to be a little more willing to accept feedback. And you have to be willing to work hard. Because you can't GPT everything. You have to work. We're seeing a lot of commentary today around how workplaces are expected to adapt to the Gen Z, especially because of the workforce, the demographics that are taking place, the multi-generational workforces that are working within the same organization, right? You need to be adaptable and you need to make effort. It's not going to come to you ready-made. I'm not saying that we don't value the skills that they bring to the table. Sure, they can do a task much more easily, much more faster. Like when I see students editing reels, it's like, within like 2 minutes, the reel is done. And I remember when I used to stitch my own reels earlier, it used to take me like a good 1 hour. And today if someone tells me like, make the reel, I'm like, wait, pehle sikhao. So here I know, I'll give it to this, student, he or she will stitch it in like in no time, the reel will be ready. So they're very good with that. But just being good at something is not enough. You also need to be disciplined. Which is why many a times, in my class, you can't come without the book. But then there are students sometimes, the ones who are very regular in the class. Sure, there are days where you may forget it accidentally. It's okay. I know you've been disciplined throughout. You followed the drill throughout. That one time you can be excused. But someone who makes it an excuse all the time, right? That doesn't settle. So you need to work hard. There is no replacement for that. And as we talk of Gen Z, there is already commentary on what Gen Alpha is going to face after this. So like we started this podcast with like destiny, right? It is going to come full circle moment for Gen Z also when Gen Alpha will enter the workforce after a couple of years.
Any questions? Thank you for doing this, sir. Amazing conversation.
Pleasure. Thank you.